This is the making of my friend Carla's birthday present. This is a print that I got for her. Lesbian mermaids. She loves it. And for her birthday, I'm going to frame this for her. And we're going to start with a scrap piece of wood, which, yes, I have these things laying around. And I just cut it off at the size that I wanted to give myself a little bit of edging for the print, which we're going to do a little decorative finishing to some texture paint, hides all the blemishes, gets rid of wood grain, makes it so I don't have to cut straight and perfect and sand wonderfully. Prep work I do not like. I would rather camouflage it and cover it up. So I'm going to do that with plasters and texture paints and gold leaves and all kinds of fun things like that. And to protect it, I have found a piece of stray glass, which, yes, again, finds its way into my studio. And because I am not equipped to do very fancy things with glass, as far as cutting it properly, I've decided that my design is going to have a jagged edge, as we can see, and I have cut with a hammer just randomly. And I'm going to come back and do some Dremel tool sanding, grinding down on that to make it acceptable. So this is going to get laid into place, caulked down with clear caulk over it. And then the fun part is embellishing with all these shells, because since it's an under the sea thing, I'm going to embed these into the plaster and or just liquid nail them around. And yeah, this is the beginning that looks really crappy, but wait till we're done. First, I'm going to prime this board, and I happen to have some actually tinted primer, which it really doesn't matter. It's not going to show. I'm going to cover it all up with, like I said, texture paints and stuff. So it's actually just kind of nice it's not white, because when things don't cover all the way, then at least you've got a little base of something. And since we're doing under the sea kind of things, this kind of natural color is going to be just fine. So I'm slapping this on just to give the wood a sealer, so whatever I put on it dries and does its thing. So I'm putting this on first so it can be drying while I do other things. So while the board with the primer on is drying, I'm going to do a little bit of detail work on this glass. I'm not overly excited about how it broke. It's kind of boring, but I'm going to try to grind out some interest in it. The edges here are going to be covered in caulk and probably push down into the texture. I'm not overly concerned with that, though I may, hit the top edge. The bottom's going to be covered in the shells. So that's how we're just going to secure the print on there and make sure this is on, but I don't have to find some fancy way of getting it on. So I'm going to take my trusty little Dremel tool. It's got a little grinder bit on. I do have my safety goggles on. Do we want to see? Pretty. And I'm not real good about wearing them, but this time I will. So I'm going to just kind of etch away. I might turn this off. It might get awful, but let's see what happens. So I'm just going to go along the edge and make some little grooves if I can, and mainly hit the rough edge down so it doesn't hurt anybody. And I'm going to come in and see where this has made like a nice little etch part on the bottom. It's like an etch that didn't break, right? but you can see what's going on. I'll show you when it's done. So I did a little etching around the edges just to give it a little bit of detail, a little something. And now in this top part that's going to be outside of the print, I'm going to put some crackle material. This is a porcelain craquelure, and typically you put this over the top of a painting and that gives it a aged crackle effect and literally makes cracks, so you can put glaze in it and make it look ancient. This is going to basically just kind of obscure the glass a little bit and give it a wavy kind of feel, like you can't really see all the way through it. So this is the base coat of it that is what will end up cracking when I put the top coat. So I'm going to put this on, let it dry, and then I'll come back and put the other on. So I'm just kind of giving it a weird little edge there, not straight across. And then, you know, it does its thing. We'll see what happens. Now I'm adding the top coat to the craquelure. You give it, it's going to react with the bottom coat, and when it dries it'll have those little fissures in it. And then, I'm not sure, I'll probably add some glaze into it to see all the crackling. While the crackle's drying on the glass, I'm adding the texture paint to the wooden board. This is going to have the shells embedded in it, and I'm going to gold leaf some of it and give it a paint finish. So I'll probably have to add more of this once I add the glass. The center part's where the piece is going to go, so I didn't bother to put any there, and I didn't want it to be bumpy. So this will have to dry so we can do the next thing to it. Well, the texture paint's now dry, and I'm going to put in some of this kind of rusty orange color. I want to bring out these tones around the edging. Some of this board is going to show between the print and the glass edge, so I don't want to put the gold leaf in there, so I'm just going to fill it in with this color all around, so that that's going to kind of border the print and bring those colors out. And this is a good color to go underneath leafing anyway. So if the leaf doesn't take in certain areas, which it tends to not cover completely, then this will show through, and that is a good look. I put the glue down for the gold leaf and let it dry, and now I'm adding the leaf to it. Not all the way up, because I want some of that red to show around the print. So if you've never worked with gold leaf before, it's super thin sheets of usually composite metals with gold or silver, very, very thin, fine tissue, and it adheres to the glue that goes down that remains sticky after it dries. And so where there's glue, it sticks, and where there's not, it rubs off. And you can layer and layer and layer it, and then you burnish it out. I'm going to not worry so much about the burnishing, because I'm going to just kind of use it as a ground that has a little metallic sheen to it, and then I'm going to do some painting over it. So that's where we're at so far. And next I'm going to, I think, adhere the glass down and get it in place and figure out what I'm going to do around it. So here's the concept that I hope will work. I'm caulking, which it looks white now, it will go clear, down the outer edge of the glass, kind of underneath and in the edging. This bottom part is going to get all covered up in shells and such, so it will actually get re-plastered on top of it, and all this will get covered up. So I'm not too worried about this particular edge, and this is going to be my most stable securing of the glass because it will at least have tons of goop and shells and such to cover it. But hopefully when I pick it up it will stay in place and not fall apart. And that didn't look like it seeped under at all. So I'm going to move some under and put some along the top, and then I'm going to flip it over to dry. While I've got it flipped over, I'm going to add a little bit of glaze to this glass so that all the little cracks, which are there but might not be there, they're in there, from our Krekel medium. So I'm just going to brush that in. I don't want too much color to it, but just enough that it has some character to it. It's pretty cool looking just on its own in real life with light showing behind it, but this will just give it a little bit more oomph, hopefully. I'll try to get it all the way into that crack. Okay, everything's got dry. I've added some more plaster, so now it's all about adding shells and building up this detail that will ultimately get painted, so this white is not going to stay. I wish I could have tinted that, which might have been a good idea. Oh well, I didn't. So I'll deal with that after. Still cute. Alright, I'll come back when I'm a little bit more underway. Hard to film and be creative. We're pretty much dry with the caulk and the texture paint. So now we've got all the shells loaded in, and I've put the gold leaf glue adhesive all around the edging here. So I'm going to gold leaf right onto the glass and get rid of that edge. So you can see how it just peels right off, rubs right off where there was no adhesive. So I'm kind of covering up the caulk. Even though it's clear, the wetness actually reacted with the gold leaf and turned it kind of green, which isn't a bad thing. Just it's a little more than I wanted to have on the edge there. So kind of camouflaging that as well. And I put some also onto the texture paint. I'm going to paint into that too, but I hit it with the adhesive so I could put a little bit of gold leaf down in that area. I'm going to need a brush to work it into these little shell cracks. But anyway, you get the idea. I'll finish this up. Well, we're down to the last bit. All the gold leaf is on. So now it's putting the glaze over, taking the leaf down a bit so it's not quite so bright. And this is going to take quite a few layers of color because this is very sheer stuff, and I don't want it to disappear, the leaf. It's just going to kind of tone it down. So I'm adding some blue. I'm going to probably add some red, some burn umber. I'm going to go up into the shells a bit. Not crazy about my sand dollar. I'll have to come back with that. Fix it with some white. So I'm just going to kind of smush it in and around the shells. And if it gets on the shells, I'm not too particular about that. Sand dollar actually just sucks up the paint, so that one's a little bit more than I wanted. So I'm going to wipe a little bit of this back. Let it just kind of age it a little bit in the creases and dull it down a little bit from that to that. So I'm going to keep working on it. And now it's finished and hanging on the wall that it was designed for. And see, the red is exactly the red, and it brings it all together. I will zoom in for that lighting, not so great. So that actually worked out really well, matching that up. And then you can see through the glass a little bit, which is what I wanted. And so a little bit more touch up and put a coat of gloss varnish, a little bit more of the gold leaf, and there 'tis from its ugly beginnings.